Hi and welcome to the Quickstart tutorial for Boxit. Select your text layer and click Boxit to apply the effect. Here we can adjust all our settings, like expansion for all sides simultaneously, the width, the height, or each side individually. These values can also be negative. We can trim the box from all sides. If we check Trim to Square, the box will always trim to a perfect square, no matter your settings. We can set the corner radius and the skew value. If we select the shape layer, you can see very similar settings. These, however, only affect the selected shape layer. If we had several duplicates of this shape layer, the settings on the text layer would affect all of them at once. Think of them as master settings. Let's duplicate this box, for example. Give it a stroke. Turn off the fill. And increase the expansion. Let's duplicate this layer one more time and increase the expansion some more. Now we can adjust the settings here, which will only affect this layer. If we go to our text layer, however, the same setting will affect all the layers. So with a single slider, we can set the corner radius for all text boxes. And if we decide that one box shouldn't have rounded corners, we can select it, go to Corners and check Ignore Master Corners. Now we have individual control over it. And the same goes for skew. You can set the corner radius, adjust the curvature to make the corners even smoother, or flatten them out. There are 4 different corner profiles: convex, concave, flat, and step. You can change the corner unit to %. Now when we set the corner radius to 100, it's the maximum radius. If you uncheck Adaptive Corners, you can see that the gap in the corner is bigger than the gap on the sides, even though both boxes have the exact same radius. This is because the outer box actually needs a slightly larger radius in order for the corners to appear consistent. Adaptive Corners adjusts the radius accordingly. If you check Separate Corners, you have complete control over the radius, curvature, and profile of each individual corner. In addition to boxes, we can also add other elements. Select your text layer, choose an element from the drop-down menu, and click Add. Lines will give you a shape layer with 4 individual lines, which you can turn on and off using these checkboxes. You have settings for the position. You can set the expansion, trim the bounding box, or each individual line. Boundary nulls adds 9 null objects to the scene, which will always stick to the bounding box. You can then attach any layer you want to any corner or any side, and it will always stick to that position. By default, you can freely position the text. When you go to Position, you can see that Align To is set to None. If we set this to Composition, the text snaps to the center of the composition, and we can then set the X and Y alignment with these 2 drop-down menus. For a lower third, for example, we would position the text in the bottom left corner and offset the position slightly. So no matter what size the composition has, the text will always stay in the bottom left corner. I've prepared a second text, which we want to align to the top left corner of this text box. To do that, go to Position and choose Align to Parent Layer. We then drag the pick whip to the text box to make it the parent layer and set the alignment to the top left. Under the anchor point settings, we can uncheck Auto Mode and manually set the anchor point to have precise control over the alignment. We can change the expansion and text size of both layers, and the box will always stay perfectly aligned at the top left corner. If we trim the box, the parented layer moves with it. If we want to make adjustments that don't affect the parented layer, we have to use the settings on the box itself. All these settings will be ignored by the parented layer. Under Position, you can find the percentage-based offset controls. We can drag the slider and it will move the text box just outside the composition. This works in both directions. If the box had a glow or any other effect that would show up on the edge, we can increase this margin slider to push out the text box even further. We have options to offset only the text, only the box, or push the text just outside the box. This is handy when working with track mats. And the best part is, you can change the text, the position, the scale, even parent it to another layer, and the animation always updates automatically. Select your text layer and go to Size options. Here we can set the minimum width using a pixel value. Or we can use the width of another layer. Let's say we want these two boxes to be the same width, no matter which text is longer. So with the position selected, we are going to choose the box from the name. And with the name selected, we are going to choose the box from the position. So no matter which text gets longer, both boxes will always have the same width. If we want both text layers to be inside one box, we can go to the settings on the box layer and expand the top without affecting the position of the name. And then hide the other box. Now, if I modify the text, the box will update accordingly. For the height, we have the same options. We can set the minimum height using a pixel value, or we can get the height from a specified layer. Select your text layer and let's add a typewriter text preset. Let's try this new blinking cursor typewriter. As you can see, Boxit works perfectly with it. But what if I don't want the text box to grow with the text, but rather have the full width from the beginning? This is where size at time comes into play. By default, it's set to current time, but we can choose between layer in, mid, and out point, as well as setting a custom time. Let's choose layer midpoint, as we know that at the center of the layer, the animation is already over, and the text has its final width. Now the box doesn't grow with the text anymore. If you use the typewriter preset, you will notice that the box doesn't grow with the text by default. You can change this by adding a scale property to the animator and setting it to 0%. By default, the box gets its height from the cap height, which is measured from the baseline to the top of a flat capital letter like H or I, and it ignores any ascenders and descenders. X height is measured from the baseline to the top of a lowercase x, and full height is measured from the bottommost pixel to the topmost pixel. In most cases, cap height gives you the best looking text box with a consistent height no matter which letters are used. To change these settings, select your text layer and go to Text Options. Here you can change the text height to cap height, X height, and full height. When working with multiple lines, there are very specific cases where you would want to change the line detection method from line breaks to leading. If you're using paragraph text, make sure to check paragraph mode. And if you're using vertical text, be aware that it only works with full height. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and I can't wait to see the incredible text animations you'll create with Boxit. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in another video.